everyone. Welcome to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha Coyne, a messaging strategist and a copywriter for the interior design industry. I've been marketing for what feels like forever in my past career at some of the biggest global firms like KPMG and Deloitte. Today, I write website copy for designers using my signature voice of customer framework. If you're a designer looking to up your marketing game and attract premium clients, this podcast is for you. Each week on the show, we're going to be talking all things marketing, from branding to messaging to social media, SEO, and so much more, so you can have all the tools you need to grow your business and attract your dream clients. Hey guys, welcome back to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha, and my guest today is Maria Platusic, the owner and creative director behind Platusic Design Creative Studio. So today we're talking about rebranding. In my line of work as a copywriter for interior design websites, 90% of the time, clients come to me in the process of a rebrand. They either started one already or I'm their first point of contact in that journey. They're either doing a complete overhaul of their brand where they're revamping everything from their website to the visual identity with logos and colors and palettes and fonts and all that jazz. And their messaging as well, because they realize they're no longer attracting the right client, or they've simply outgrown their current brand and it's no longer serving them or doesn't really feel true to them. So I know that rebrand is a top of mind for a lot of you, but rebrand is not always a solution. Or I should say, you got to know when rebranding is a good decision. There's a good timing for a rebrand. And that's what we're talking about today. As an expert in this subject, Maria, my guest, will share with us the 3 top signs your business is ready for a rebrand. So let me tell you a little bit about Maria. Maria is an award-winning branding designer, brand strategist, and a WordPress magic maker. She's been in this game for over 20 years. She started her journey working at a corporate agency or agencies, helping Fortune 500 businesses develop their brands. Now she focuses on helping small business owners and consultants scale and grow via effective brand strategy and gorgeous branding design to achieve their big picture goals. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me, Masha. I'm excited to be here today.
Me too. This is an exciting topic. And I feel like where I want to start is to understand from your perspective, because of your line of work. I want to hear your perspective. What's the main catalyst for people wanting to rebrand? What happens in their business that makes them want to seek out a specialist like you, or just in general, what's that thing that makes them want to say, yep, rebrand is in the cards for me?
And I love the way you segued it at the beginning, saying, a lot of the times people are either in the big overhaul or they've pivoted or changed their offerings or things like that. And those are the biggest catalysts when you're trying to try something new, but you're trying to hold on to the old to get you to the new. And that's where there's the conflict, and that's where that arises. But overall, it's that feeling of knowing that there's something more for you in your business. You've reached a certain point and you're trying to get to that next level, but somehow you feel stuck. And a lot of the times, my particular clients, they don't necessarily know what the main reason is. They just know that there's something holding them back. That's the not allowing them to leap onto that new level and attract that new audience, or share their new offerings, or reach that potential new customer or industry specific. So there are a lot of signs, and sometimes it's multiple little things that add up into the snowball of one big thing. But I'm going to share with you the top 3 signs that I've witnessed over the past, now it's almost close to 25 years. I say 20 plus, but doing this for a long time. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but I still love it. So it's something that's my passion, and I'm excited to dive into the top 3. But again, it's that overall feeling of and want something more. That's the optimal time to take a look at rebranding, and as opposed to trying to force the old brand to get you to the new ending.
That's right. I love that. What a perfect segue into just talking about this. So let's get to it. What's that first sign that's like a flag, that's like a clear sign that, yep, you're ready for a rebrand?
So the first one is pretty common, but most of my clients didn't enjoy admitting it, is that they're actually embarrassed to showcase their brand. They're currently not proud to share their website or social media pages or any marketing collateral with potential clients because they feel their branding is visually unprofessional. Perhaps it appears dated and honestly, it just doesn't light them up anymore. They're just not proud of it. It also doesn't share their level of expertise and experience, for example, in the interior design industry. So what happens is it leaves them looking amateurish, even though their credentials and accolades and accomplishments could fill up a room. Their brand is leaving them falling short. And when you do that, it almost feels like you're not all in your business. Mm-hmm. And when you're like not sharing your website or like, oh, here's my website, but we're going to revamp it soon. Like just that holding back, your audience, your potential clients and customers, they sense that, they feel that, and they know that something is up. So that's the first reason is, you're just not lit up and proud to share your existing branding.
Yeah, that's interesting that you led with that, because that's exactly what I feel when clients come to me. These are the exact words they use to describe how they feel currently about their brand, whether it's, like you said, your website or any of their marketing assets. It's that they're embarrassed. And I know I just have gone through a rebrand myself, or I'm actually currently going through one. And that was the catalyst for me, when I was just like, well, I don't even want to share it. I don't even want to, when you go to a networking event or you, pitch a new podcast to speak on, and you just like, almost like, yes, that's me, but don't go to my website because it's not representative of me. Nothing is kind of relevant there because, you started your business 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you haven't updated it since. So, totally with you on that one. Embarrassing is the very, very clear sign. Okay, that's cool. So what's the next one?
Yeah. So the second one, it's also a common sign, but a lot of my clients have a hard time figuring out why it continues to happen. They know that there's a particular issue, and that is that you're not attracting your ideal target audience. And or you actually want to pivot and attract a new audience, a new ICA. You need to ensure that all is in alignment to attract the right fit people, but you're finding it hard to isolate and rectify the ongoing problem. Like why is this happening? So when you create a post or you create content or you share a service or an offering, the wrong people are paying attention. And that happens for a reason. That happens because there's a misalignment via your visuals and the messaging combined that you're putting out there. And that's why I love what you do, because the copy is so, so important. You can't have just the pretty, you need the words to match the pretty. And because I'm a strategist, it always has to be strategically done. So for example, if you were a designer who originally worked for budget-friendly homeowners or worked in the residential realm, but now you want to be serving high-end luxury builders or even the hospitality industry, if your messaging and visuals and supporting case studies don't represent that or showcase that, that's a big tell that you need to pay attention to, because you're taking your current branding efforts and you're trying to bring them up to that higher level, but you soon and quickly realize the branding and messaging cannot support you any further, and something needs to be done about that.
And that feels like a big one. The second sign is a big one because there's so many elements at play. Like you said, it's not just the visual, it's also the messaging. And I'm curious, let's say if it's, there's two things that you mentioned there. One, if you're not attracting the ideal client. So you're attracting like tire kickers or DIYers or whoever, just the wrong fit kind of client. And the second one is if people are going through a pivot, if they're, either change it. Maybe they're working with a business strategist and, on pivoting their audience. What would be that first step to kind of understand? Because you're not going to go straight to visuals, right? Like you said, you are a strategist first, right? So what's the first step in that if you find yourself in that situation where you're pivoting or you realize, yep, I'm definitely working with the wrong audience or I'm attracting the wrong audience? What are some of the steps that they need to take, or what do they start with in order to say, okay, I think I need a rebrand because something is not working as far as the audience?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it's funny because it's diving into your target audience that you learn so much intel. So for example, for my audience, I know that messaging is a big culprit to them. And they come to me because like the messaging's not hitting, the wrong people are paying attention. It's just not, it's missing the mark. It's not hitting the way, here's what I want to say and all the amazingness I have to offer. And here's how I'm trying to share it. And it's not coming across clear and concise. But what happens is I invite you to actually push pause. And as you said, I do brand strategy first. Before I can know what your brand should look like, feel like, sound like, be like, any of the visual representation, I need to have the data and facts first. So when they come to me and I advertise, you have trouble with your messaging, like I know that that's their struggle point. But I immediately know they need to push pause and they need to take a look and dive deeper into their target audience. So it's actually when you have a messaging problem, it's a target audience problem because they haven't isolated and pinpointed the struggles, what they're trying to achieve. What is it that they are truly wanting in the end result? Like, what is it that here's the after that they're envisioning? That's what you need to kind of isolate first. And then you can craft and create messaging that hits on point, on target. You're piquing the right ears and they're paying attention to what you have to say. So it is actually pressing pause because it is one of those things when it comes to brand strategy. A lot of business owners do the surface level, and I know you will witness it as well as a copywriter and a content writer. They do the surface level and they have like the main pieces, but it's like when they work with me, it's like we got to go like 9 levels deep here to get to the core of what you actually need, of what your audience actually needs, and craft messaging and visuals and everything for them. So it is pushing pause and taking steps back to build out the proper foundation so they can now showcase these new offerings and share their excellence and their expertise in the industry.
I love it. Well said. And I feel like you said something interesting that I just want to repeat. Messaging problem is most likely a target audience problem. And that's so key. So sometimes there's a clear misalignment, or maybe you don't know your new audience or your ideal audience well enough. How do you recommend? Because there's templates out there, creating your ideal customer profile, creating your client avatar, and a lot of, both you and I know, like sometimes like they're barely scratching the surface. It's like, well, the demographics and what are they into, and their family income, all those things. But we obviously need to have a more in-depth knowledge about that ideal audience that you want to work with. How do you recommend getting to know the audience? Let's say they've never, because a lot of times I do find my clients find themselves in a situation where they're pivoting, they're switching audiences. But how do you get to know your new audience if you've never worked with one? What would you recommend to kind of, how do if you've never had a client like that from your dream client kind of bucket, how do you get to know them?
I love this question. So first off, yes, everybody has filled out those ICA forms, and it's Sally, and she lives in a 2.5-story home, has 2 kids and a dog, and drives an SUV, and has purple nail polish. And I'm like, you're not Pepsi. We don't care what color Sally's nail polish is. Like, we don't need to know these things. It's good to know, but those aren't the actual true pieces of information that will benefit you. So research is the top word that I would recommend. So whatever you want to achieve, I can guarantee you 99.9% of the time, someone is already doing it. So how about we take a look at the competitors, see what they're doing, see what's working. So I do offer competitive analysis, like that's part of my brand strategy background. So diving into your competition, even though it may make you feel overwhelmed and the feeling of imposter syndrome and all of the hustling to try to keep up, I actually just get you and invite you to take a look at the competition that inspires you, where you aspire to be 2 to 5 years from now, and take a look at what's working, what lights you up about them, what you love about what they're doing, and what don't you enjoy about what they're doing. And the key takeaways in that process is it pushes you closer to who is the right fit, to what your process is, to what you can do best. And they will probably have the clientele and the case studies of the audience that you're trying to pivot towards as well. So research. Take out marketing quizzes, poll audiences, poll your current audience, poll audiences in communities and groups where it allows you to do that, and ask specific questions. Be like, if you know that this particular ABC audience is the one you want to serve, ask specific questions and get ABC audience to answer the questions. So marketing research, competitive analysis, those are the quickest and best ways to get intel on the audience you want to serve, the ideal audience you want to serve. And just one thing I want to highlight, there are many, many people out there who could utilize our services, many. The difference between those and the ideal are these are the clients that light you up and make you want to work on Monday. Focus on them and be all in on the audience that you absolutely adore and wish to serve. Make them the base of everything you do.
I like that. And that's a really great advice. You've mentioned a couple of things that people can do to kind of find out more about their ideal audience. But I'm wondering, I especially love what you said about asking very specific questions, because oftentimes we ask kind of generic questions. And if you ask a generic question, part of the problem is you're just going to get a generic answer. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you can share just a couple of specific questions that, and I know it all depends on, what the business is, what kind of client you're trying to attract. But I'm wondering, what would you consider to be a couple of like really good questions that get to the heart of who your ideal client is, that where you gain that understanding of what moves them, what motivates them, how do they make decisions? Do you have a couple of questions that interior designers can, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm just kind of curious if.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's just my mind pauses and I want to ask the interior designers a question first.
Interesting.
Because the clearer you are with who you want to serve, those questions come like easily to you. So when you think of your processes and your procedures and just, the way you've streamlined your offerings and how you provide to your client base, which client makes the easiest transaction and the easiest one to follow that process? And what I mean by that is, like, there's clients that can be a bit abrasive. There's clients that oh, I don't like doing email. Will you voicemail me, or can you leave me a message? There's clients that actually go through your processes and love that you offer X and love that you offer Y and love that this is part of your process. There's ideal clients that make your process even easier. Who would they be?
Mm-hmm. So it almost sounds like you're looking at your process, or kind of looking from the outside inside your business. And I don't know if that makes sense, what I just said, but it's almost like looking at your process and saying, okay, what kind of client enjoys ABC? And you're literally going through your process and saying, like you said, like maybe they like Boxer, maybe they like hand holding, maybe they like you to accompany them to shops, or maybe you don't. Maybe you like clients that kind of prefer the hands-off approach. So literally looking at your process and almost side by side doing this in-depth profile of a client, I guess, matching the ideal client to how you work, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I find like we always make the process the most difficult when I'm always guiding my clients to take the least abrasive path, because we want to love what we do and continue to love what we do. And sometimes we feel like, oh, okay, but I really want to help these clients, but I know it's a bit heavier and I got to do a lot of heavy lifting and I got to make sure I follow up, 8 times, and I got to make sure I do this and I got to make sure. But then I know we've all had those clients who are like, oh, yep, here's what you asked for. Here's what you need. And they turn it around quickly and they do all the things that you need them to do. Well, let's focus on them. And I'm sure you have data and facts about past clients. So now you get into almost the characteristics and the personality traits of who is a really good fit for you. And that's something to explore before you come up with the questions to ask them. So that's why, again, I like going deep. And before we're going to sit here and, craft a question to ask, we need to know who we're asking the question to and truly get to know them. And that way you can cater that question beautifully and get the right fits. Because if you enjoy replying for email and it's almost like you want to get the clients who are absolutely ready. They know they need help. They know they're struggling. They may not know exactly the type of struggle or, exactly the type of help they need, but they're willing, ready, and able to put in the work to make it flow easiest. And that's the least abrasive path, because there's clients who will drag their feet. There's clients who will not get back to you for months and months to delay the project. All of these things you want to factor in. So I've become, because this is what I do for my clients, I've become really keen and in tune with who I enjoy working with. And here's a little extra tip for you guys. Create a non-ideal client avatar. I'm sure everyone has told you to create an ideal client avatar. Create a non-one. Who is not a good fit for you? Sometimes it's easier to write that out word for word and keep it handy. Because when you have those clients who are not necessarily ideal, but are, holding money in front of you and a contract in front of you, when you have that piece of paper and you're like, oh, red flag, it reminds you of who not to choose and aligns you closer to who is the best fits. So I know I kind of indirectly didn't answer your question, but because that's how deep we got to go in knowing our audience before we know which question to ask.
I absolutely love that you said that we need to consider not just who we want to work with, but also who is not an ideal client. And I actually have that for myself. The one thing that I would say, I wish I checked in with that list a lot more frequently, because in the moment, sometimes like a new lead comes in or a new client or a new prospect is chatting with me. I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting project. I'm up for a challenge. And then it happened to me before, because now I serve interior designers. But before I was kind of a generalist copywriter and I would work with any industry. And in the last kind of 6 years, I've worked with 2 legal clients, both from law firms. And the first time I worked with a law firm, I was like, okay, definitely never again. I'm not doing this again. This is a horrible project, because I'm very conversational style of writing, and legal is just a completely different animal. And then another legal client came in a year and a half ago, and and the gentleman was so nice. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like an amazing project. I'm definitely going to do it. It's so different from that situation 5 years ago. And what do you know? It was just bad situation that I found myself in. So we do need to create that list, absolutely, and be as detailed as possible, because when you're detailed, you can easily spot those characteristics and see them as red flags from the get-go, not when you're in the weeds of things, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you shared a live example. And I have many live examples.
I'm sure.
And 25 years in, I'm still adding to my non-ideal client avatar. So it's the only thing I take from it is save that data, save that information, record it down, and then it serves you best, right? So there's never really failures. It's just learned experiences. And I just keep adding to my non-ICA, and aligns me even closer to who are the perfect fits. And that, like, honestly, if you want to know the impact, that is the impact I want to create for each of my clients, is let's fill your roster with ideal clients that light you up, ideal, projects that just get your soul pumping and just invigorate you. So that's why I go this deep with my clients, because I want them to have those projects. I want them to have those clients. And that's the whole point of doing it all.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like the secondary question so we already established that in order to kind of understand what questions you need to ask and how do you get to know your audience, you need to get clear on who that audience is, and you need to first and foremost to better understand your brand and what you deliver and, what lights you up, as you say. But the secondary thing is, how do you even, let's say you've done all of that, how do you determine where to find those ideal clients? Because I've attended a number of I guess like mastermind sessions and networking sessions where people are like, I know who my ideal client is. I just don't know where to find them. How do you even approach them? Where would you go? Where would you recommend to even start to kind of find your ideal client?
Yeah, I think it just depends on who it is you are searching for, right? So like knowing who it is you're searching for, certain platforms would probably be more ideal than others. Like, for example, LinkedIn might be better for you to try to attempt to find your audience versus Facebook, for example, or online networking groups. Are there organizations that your target audience is mainly a part of? Could you be a part of that networking organization and introduce yourself into that realm, or become, a part of that group or a part of that community, so that you can have a seat at that particular table? Again, it always stems back to knowing your target audience and how much you know about them, so that you can pinpoint, okay, this is what they enjoy doing in their spare time. So, for example, I'll just give you a quick example, that my one client, she was like a medical spa, service provider, and she had a brick and mortar. When she was looking for her particular clientele, we figured out that they enjoy doing yoga and Pilates, and they enjoy having, the details of, physical fitness is a big deal for them. So I invited her, I said, go join all of the Facebook communities that are local, that are Pilates and yoga related. And long and behold, she, had conversations with lots of people, and they're like, oh, and I would really love to get this done. She's like, oh, well, I actually have a medical spa and I could help. She's like, oh, brilliant. And she was making the connection. So sometimes it's indirectly finding them. If you know the types of interests that they like and what they do with their leisure time, that becomes helpful. So I'm actually showing you where you can find your target audience. You don't have to guess. So again, know as much as you can about them, and we can test out many, many ways to find them.
So that goes back to this foundational piece of first getting to know who your ideal client is, putting together that in-depth profile. And from there, you will obviously then gain such insights as where do they hang out? Who do they trust as experts? Where do they look for new information? Who do they listen to, and all those things. So that's why, in my process, that as I'm sure in yours, before I write a word of copy, or maybe in your instance, before you put together, before you even look at visuals or colors or anything, it all goes back to the strategy. Research takes, I would say, 80% of my process. Trying to get to know your audience, trying to get to know your brand, your values, your beliefs, everything you stand for. So, research first, and then you'll start putting together the pieces.
Yes. And the thing is, everything becomes so much easier The more you know about them, your messaging becomes clear. You know exactly what you need to say to pique their interest. You know where you can find them and where you should be posting and placing your attention. You know how to, when it comes to the brand messaging, I usually segment it, because a lot of the times you have target audience segments. Like you'll have your primary, your secondary, your tertiary of audiences, depending on the offer, service, or offering that you have, and you might be serving different people. So you have to craft your messaging for that particular audience as well. So just like you're creating a resume for a job description, you will tweak your resume to match the job description best. Your messaging needs to be tweaked for each target audience segment as well. So it's honestly, it's the heavy work now. And I know it can sound daunting or overwhelming, but a lot of my clients find it invigorating and exhilarating and just relief after we go through the process, that once you go through these necessary steps, you have so much clarity on the other end that it's well worth it.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point that you just made, that you, as an interior designer or any other service provider, you do have secondary audiences. You may not think of that. I just recently surprised one of my clients that she did have a secondary audience. And for interior designers, yes, your primary audience is those homeowners that are looking to invest in interior designer and just kind of, renovations. But your secondary audience is suppliers, trades, the connections that you make in order to run your business, the connections that you make that can then be your referral partners. Yeah. So your messaging absolutely needs to speak to both, to those homeowners looking for an interior designer, but also to those, trades that, to your black book, to those trades that are going to that are going to be amazing connections in your business and eventually, hopefully, bring you new clients.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. So always knowing who those great referrals can be, those referral partners, those strategic referral partners, and making sure we're capturing them in a lot of the messaging too, because you don't have to run your business alone. You can have so much support and so much help. You just need to ask for it, like in an aligned strategic way.
Amazing. Okay. So we've covered the first sign, which is being embarrassed, not proud of your brand identity. The second one was not attracting ideal clients or going through a pivot. What is the third sign that an interior designer may need to go through a rebrand?
Yes. And this one, I just want to highlight, I've kind of made up this term, but it's called silent rebranding, where it is, I'm just going to test out the waters. I'm going to put out this offering, or I'm going to have this new offer, or I'm going to test out this new product and see how it goes about. But then what happens is you're doing it behind the scenes and you're not letting everybody know about it. And you're not necessarily rebranding in the best light because you're doing it quietly and you think, oh, I'm not rebranding. I'm just pivoting a little bit, or I'm just changing up my messaging a little bit, so then what happens when you do the silent rebranding, you're kind of putting Band-Aids on everything and not necessarily taking the bird's eye view and breaking it down and making sure that that foundation is solid. And I'm not saying don't explore. There's always the explore phase where you do need to test the waters and see if this is a viable product or service and people do require this, and you need to kind of get that feedback. Always do the marketing research. Of course, that's one piece. But if all in all, the product or service you were selling has changed over years, so if your product or service has pivoted and you don't offer those same services from when you first opened up your business, so let's say you offered one-on-one in-person design consulting, and you went to the house, or you went to the homeowner, or you did these types of things, but now you actually don't do that anymore. Now you only offer virtual tours and virtual consulting. The messaging, the visuals, the overall brand will not reflect that pivot. And if you were known for that, you kind of have to rebrand to make sure that you're known for the new thing, and not in a negative way, but this is a cool, new, exciting thing that we're relaunching. And what rebranding grants you is that, elevated feel that you could bring your clients along with you, your potentials along with you on that journey, that rebranding journey. And now you're making them aware of that pivot and change. And here's what I want to be known for now. I no longer offer this, but this is what I offer now instead. And the beautiful piece here is that the audience that was following you this entire time, if they've enjoyed everything you're doing and they're like, yep, cool, I want to see what you have to offer. Amazing. I love that you're offering this service now, or this product now. And those are like, oh, I don't really need that anymore. And they will unfollow you. I know that feels heavy, but the thing is, when you become aligned in your messaging and your offering and what you want to truly be known for, the go-to for X, the right people pay attention. So you want to filter out and weed out the wrong fits and attract the new right fits. So that is actually the optimal time to rebrand. So you can put it in a new, exciting light, as opposed to silent Band-Aid rebranding behind the scenes, which tends to happen for many.
What a cool term that you coined. I feel like you need to patent it, like silent rebranding. That's such a cool one.
I mean, you know what? If I have heard it elsewhere, I apologize, but it just feels like something I've witnessed over and over and over again, where people are like, I can't figure out why this isn't working. But then behind the scenes, they're changing their messaging, they're tweaking their website. Like, they're constantly editing and tweaking and changing. And it's like, oh, that's the death of a brand. Tweaking is the death of any brand.
Oh my God. Tweaking is a word that I hear all the time. And I was just doing website audits yesterday. I do these website audits for one interior design group for their paid membership. And I get them to fill out a questionnaire. And this is what the final audit of the day yesterday was, when I came across her questionnaire. And she's like, yeah, I'm constantly tweaking things. I think I've done a good job. Like I tweaked here, I tweaked there. I'm constantly doing that. And I feel like a lot of people, without realizing that's what they're doing, they're trying to kind of just change their brand a little bit, but not really tell anyone. Hopefully nobody noticed that I'm going to kind of silently reintroduce myself. And I also meet people that are constantly adding new services to their services page. And then they end up with this menu of 9 ways to work with you. You offer paint consultations, and you offer virtual consultations, and you offer virtual design, but then you can also do like Christmas decoration. And you go through this menu of items, and then the new trend comes up, and then you add one more, and then they remove it. And that's just the situation that I come across. I just didn't realize this is the bucket where they belong. Like, this is what they're doing. They're silently rebranding. So it's so nice to put a name to this thing that's actually a lot of interior designers are experiencing, that they are trying to change it. But the problem with that is that they're not doing it strategically. They're not looking at everything. They're kind of almost like zeroing in on this one thing, but losing almost like sight of everything else in their business. Like, how would this one thing that you change in this one area of your brand, how does that affect the target audience that you're speaking with, the values that you uphold in your brand? So you're almost like changing one thing and it changes everything else, but the impact is, not the ones that you hope for.
Yes. And again, there's so many parallels between what you're working with and who I'm working with too. I love hearing all the parallels, but the one thing I try to break down for my clients is that brand strategy, if you can think of all the gears and cogs in a clock and a watch, each tiny facet that you're working with, each of them needs to be turning in unison with the other. And when you keep fiddling with one, it puts everything else out of alignment, and you don't realize the detriment of tweaking and changing and editing and pivoting when you're doing it in this sequential, like, I'm just going to tweak this, I'm just going to change that. It makes everything come out of alignment. And then no one knows what your specialty is. No one knows why they should choose you over the rest. And when you think of your interior design business and you want to be like, this is my specialty, this is where I'm specialized, this is what I'm known for, That's the piece that gets people in the door. If you are highlighting the Swiss Army knives of all the talents and skill sets that you do, and which you do have and you do possess, like, all of us are multifaceted and serial entrepreneurs and have so many skills and talents. But what happens is when you showcase everything, it just dilutes it all. And then you lose your potency, right? So when you create that specialized focus, what you want to be known for, and what highlights, and maybe it's your process, maybe it's your procedures, maybe it's your work ethic, maybe it's the integrity, maybe it's just your aesthetic and the feel and the flow that you create. That's what people need to know. And then how you serve them, create 1 to 2, maybe 3 areas, strong areas of how you serve them. And then, what the bonus is, you don't have to not share all those skills and talents. Once they're in the door and you have them in there, now they get all of you. They get everything that you can bring to the table. You don't have to not utilize those skills. You just don't need to share every single skill to dilute your excellence. That's kind of my main push for everyone.
I agree with this wholeheartedly. I always say that what you promote is what you attract. So but it scares the hell out of people, like the interior designers that I often speak with. It scares them so much to actually niche down and to pick one specialty, because it's like, well, that means I'm like closing the door on all of these other opportunities. I'm like, no, you're not. You're just becoming known for this one thing. You're still offering all of that. It's just not front and center of your brand. And isn't that what you want to? You want to be known for this one thing, but it scares. It's very scary for people to actually put their foot down and say, okay, this is the one thing, but all you're doing is just making it easier for your marketing. All you're doing is just making it easier for your visibility and becoming known for that one thing in your industry, in your geographical area, maybe.
I love all things about niching down. And I think this will have to be another podcast.
Oh yeah.
Because I could go about 12 layers deep into this one too. And as someone who has ADHD, and I don't necessarily like things being mundane and the same every day, so I'd like to challenge myself. There are so many ways to niche down that does not have to be target audience specific, industry specific. There's just so many alternate ways in regards to, maybe it's the service that you provide. This particular service is so unique in its own right, that could be your niche. It doesn't have to be the audience, doesn't have to be the industry, doesn't have there's so many ways to go about it. And I know that feeling. It always feels like that's a big deal for a lot of my clients too. But when we go through this and we know, okay, this is your magic, and this is what you excel at, and what people know you for, and when you read your testimonials, they call on this over and over. Of course, we're going to highlight this piece, and then they get all of you in the end anyways, right? And when you think of a target audience and the niching, I like to think of it as a bullseye. So you're aiming for the center. This is who I want to serve. This is my ideal. I love this type of industry person, whatever client to work with. But remember, if it's a paint gun and it shoots for the center, there's always splatter. So people who enjoy your values, enjoy your style, enjoy your message, enjoy everything you're doing, they're still going to reach out to you. They're not going to run away. They're still going to reach out to you. So share your excellence, and the right people will always pay attention.
Oh, this is too good. And you just gave me an idea for another podcast episode. So hopefully we can bring you in to talk about niching, because niching is also one of my favorite topics. Obviously, I made the decision to niche down a few years ago, and that was the best decision I've ever made, just because it made everything easier, and it made everything clearer for me and for my audience. And that's like, clarity is, oh my God, one of the best things that you can have in your business. So let's do another one on niching. But to wrap things up, so I'm glad that we talked about this. So you gave us 3 pretty clear signs that a business is ready for a rebrand. So 1, you're not proud of your website, or you're not proud of your visual identity of your brand. 2, not attracting your ideal client or pivoting when it comes to the audience that you serve. and the silent rebranding, tweaking, and not telling anyone, and not really getting anywhere with that. So these are the clear signs. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that's important? I'm sure there are other signs, but is there anything else?
There are many, many signs, like I said, and how it shows up to you personally in your business, it may vary. But again, if you create a strategic plan, and you develop a brand that's in alignment with your big picture goals, not only will you get more of the right clients, you will also attract that ideal audience with ease. So as you said, you have clarity. Everything just becomes so much easier when your messaging and visuals and your strategic plan is all aligned. It's like magic. And it's the heavy weight just lifted off of. And I love the way you described it, how it was an amazing, like when you niche down, it was an amazing pivot for you and your business, and just boom, now everything makes sense and you have clarity. That's what happens when you rebrand the right way. It's just so much content, so much clarity, so much, like my clients, after we go through the brand strategy, they're like, I have months and months and months and months of content to create now. And I'm like, yes, you do. You absolutely do. And you know who you're writing it for, you know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it. It's just a very different feeling. So that rebranding, when you hear that term, you think of overwhelm. Oh, I got to change this and I got to edit that and I got to move all these things over. And it's like this huge overhaul. When I invite you to realize that it can be inspiring, invigorating, and just such a relief. It doesn't have to feel heavy, especially if you have the right guide to get you along the path. It does make it much easier.
Oh, the right guide is everything when you've got the support and the knowledge and somebody's expertise, and somebody's eyes on your brand, like an outsider's eyes. That's everything. So I agree with that. Maria, I want to ask you something. Can you share one habit or practice that you implemented in your business or in your life that has been game-changing for you?
So immediately I go to, it's more of a personal thing, if that's okay to share. But yeah, for me,
I love a personal thing.
I just created me time in my business. Like I have 3 kids, I have a husband, I have a home, I have a cat, you have all the things, and you're running a business. And when you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you know, a small business owner, you're wearing a million hats at all times. We forget to take care of ourselves. And what I have just like, I pushed it because I've burnt out in the past, just trying to do all the things and making sure everything, you know, recovering perfectionist here. But it's trying to do all the things, and I burnt myself out and made myself physically ill. And I said, never again. So what I have done is I implemented me time. So after all the morning drop-offs of taking my kids to school, and there's 3 different times that they're getting dropped off, I allocate a half an hour to an hour of me time. So whether it's just reading, whether it's doing yoga, whether it's working out, and when the weather's nicer here, I love to walk outdoors and just be outside whenever I can. It's me time. And what I found is that grounds me and prepares me for the rest of the day, and I can serve my clients and my business at my best capacity.
Love it. That's a really good one. Okay, this has been amazing. I want to thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom coming from like 20 years of experience doing what you do. From what I understand, there's something that you'd love to share with the listeners, a bit of a freebie. So feel free to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm offering is, if you are questioning your messaging and to see if it's in alignment and if it feels like it's clear and concise and your audience, it makes sense to them, that audience that you're trying to do, and you would like to have a check-in, I offer free mini brand messaging check-ins and sessions. So if you would like to just experience that, again, no strings, just me helping you, guiding you, seeing where you're at, you can reach out to me. So I'm at Platusic Design on all the platforms. I'm sure Masha will drop the link as well. But even on my website, www.platusicdesign.com, it's right at the top to book the free messaging audit. And I'd love to check in with you. So I'm happy to share that with you guys.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Maria.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Marketing for Designers. This is Masha Cohen signing off. See you next week.